Okay. Dennis, you should be able to use your arrow keys.
Okay.
To move between, okay? I think
Right.
we're good to go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I'm Darcia Root. Hello. We have a really nice turnout here in the building, guys. I think Davis is going to present an award. Are you the one, or are you just waving at me? Davis is just really friendly, and he's waving at me. Somebody told me they needed to present it. Okay.
Asked Mike Sprague from Arkansas Trail Council. That, that award.
Okay, great.
Hello, I'm Mike Sprague.
Come up here so everybody can hear.
My name is Mike Sprague. I'm the state trails coordinator. We're for Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage and Tourism, and the relatively newly created outdoor recreation office. I'm also part of the Arkansas Trails Council. I'm executive secretary of Arkansas Trails Council. And every year, I think in COVID, it didn't quite happen. But every year they try to give away, they give away 4 awards. Volunteer of the Year, Professional of the Year, Organization of the Year, and Advocate of the Year. This year we actually gave another special award for, we have a Lifetime Achievement Award we gave to Ken Smith. I don't know if you're familiar with Ken Smith from the Buffalo River.
Yep.
But this year, for Advocate of the Year, one of your own, Reed Green. Nominated by quite a lot of people, Game and Fish and Keep Arkansas Beautiful, or Kristen Barlow, Game and Fish, Keep Arkansas Beautiful, Norm Berner, or Little Rock Beautiful. Judge Hyde also led a recommendation, talked about how much he's worked on the Southwest Trail with him, within the Bush Creek area. I guess he cleaned up a lot more than just Bush Creek, but everyone I'm sure knows his work with Bush Creek. But they say that you would help with the trails.
They call me Rock Bar.
And I've known Reed for a while. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I used to be very active with Friends of Bush Creek.
We're trying to get that into a nonprofit.
Right. So I do know how much work he puts into it, and I don't know if any of you have been on the cleanups at Bush Creek, but they are something else. They get things done. There's unfortunately, a lot that needs to be cleaned all the time. But crews there do a tremendous job, and Reed has been there from the beginning.
Yeah, we're approaching 20.
And for those at home, Reed is reporting that we're approaching 25,000 pounds of trash that we've removed from the Bush Creek watershed. And he's won the Advocate of the Year for Trail Council, Arkansas Trail Council.
So let me explain the award a little bit. So this year, we usually try to get some artwork to put on our board. And this year we decided we're going to use a scan of plant pressing. This is one of the plants native only to Arkansas. And so each ward has a different one. I'm sorry, we already gave the words out. The trail have to be except for Reed. So, but
I got yes, amendments.
Yeah. Pass it around.
Well, we're not going to pass it around. We're not going to pass it around because people have greasy pizza hands. I didn't give them enough time to go wash their hands.
You're going to show it on there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a camera. That's a good, well, put your hands together for Reed, everybody. Yeah. And tonight, guys, we've got Dennis Kavanaugh from the National Weather Service here with us. Dennis, I got a couple quick questions for you if you want to come
Yeah.
from over here. So you've worked for the National Weather Service in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yes. Yeah. I
And-
started in
and-
Topeka and then went to the Dallas-Fort Worth office.
So as an Okie, do you have something against Oklahoma? Is that why you've never worked there? or-
No, that just haven't the opportunity didn't arise. I guess,
Okay,
when I was
okay.
applying for jobs.
And you came from two states that are historically Tornado Alley. And it
Yes.
seems like the timing is, did you bring Tornado Alley with you when you came to this part of the country or?
Actually, my time in Arkansas has been the quietest for tornadoes in my
That's
entire
true, yeah,
career.
yeah.
So I've been here 7 years in Arkansas. Up until March 31st, it actually was very quiet. I hadn't had an EF3 tornado in the 7 years I had been here.
Yeah,
I had had 11 EF3 or greater tornadoes before that in my
Yeah,
career,
yeah.
in the 10 years before. So, but it happened.
have
clearly.
you ever seen like a witch or a house fly by you when you were working on a tornado evaluation?
No, thankfully that hasn't happened.
Okay, good. We don't think that's happened here yet, but give us time.
Right.
And then what got you interested in meteorology? Was it
Well,
like as a kid, your dad took you tornado chasing or?
No. Yeah, my dad is a police officer, my mom a teacher. I was always interested in weather. It's hard to know why. I just, ever since I was a little kid, I was always interested in weather, wanted to track it independently. I guess the selfish motivation, I grew up in Northern Ohio. One of the big reasons I wanted to know the weather forecast was to see if we were going to get off school, right? Lake effect snow. So
Yes,
I had some
exactly, yeah.
motivation to do that.
Okay, well, listen, I'm gonna let you segue into your presentation here.
Yeah,
And
sounds good.
that's good.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, yeah, thanks for inviting me, and thank you, all of you, for being here. I'm going to give a talk I've never given before. So you're either very lucky or very unfortunate. Only time will tell. But today we're going to talk about flash floods and flash droughts. I've talked about flash floods many times before, but never flash droughts. I've never had anybody interested in them. So we will talk about that, especially in the context of our most prolific flash drought, which was 2012, the summer of 2012. We already went through introductions. I had that built in just in case. So I'll move right into flooding. And flooding, the nature of flooding, of course, is, an overflowing of water onto land that is normally dry. In very basic terms, it's water where you don't want it. Water belongs in creeks, streams, rivers, lakes, ponds, so on and so forth. But you don't want it around your house. You don't want it in your house. You don't want it in areas where you're normally walking or playing with children. So flooding, it's water where we don't want it, but it is a pretty natural phenomenon. Flooding has happened as long as there's been water on Earth, and I guess that's been since as long as the Earth has been cool enough to have liquid water or water in a liquid state. So probably for a good 4 billion years on this planet, there's been some form of flooding. But the danger of flooding, especially as humans keep spreading across the Earth and specifically Arkansas, as our population continues to grow, more people are in the way of floods. So flash flooding, we think about all of the weather hazards that we have here in Arkansas, and we talked about tornadoes. Of course, we had the ginormous hail yesterday. It didn't hit Little Rock proper, but it did hit the southern part of the state. We had
Hey, I really don't want to interrupt your flow, but could you share your screen so we could see it on Zoom as well?
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be shared, so let's find out what's going on. Can you see it now? Does
Yes,
everyone
we
see it?
can.
Thank you.
Awesome. So of all the weather hazards that we get in Arkansas, tornadoes, severe storms, of course, they get the bulk of the coverage, but flash flooding is, and probably will be always, the #1 killer. Most people that die in flash floods, unfortunately, it occurs in vehicles. You do sometimes get that very rare flash flood that wipes through a neighborhood in the middle of the night, and that's tragic, and there's not much you can do about that. But by and large, most flash flooding deaths are preventable. It's what happens when people drive into a flood. Not all the times on purpose, but most of the time. Most of the time, people that drive into floods, they know it's flooded and they drive into the flood anyways. And there are various reasons for that. But lightning, tornadoes, those are all very, very common hazards. Lightning fatalities also do not get very much media attention, but you see it's just as hazardous as tornadoes. Of course, the reason for that is there's just a lot more lightning than there are tornadoes. So there's a lot more opportunity for people to get hit by lightning than there are for people to get hit by tornadoes. Nope. Let's see. Maybe we'll do this. Hey, there we go. Okay, so where does flooding occur? Well, I mean, this is one of those things where there's a tornado alley, right? So the Great Plains, especially now the southern United States, climate change has changed that regime of where the maximum tornadoes are occurring. However, it's the Great Plains into the southern US. That's primarily where tornadoes are in the world. There's another tornado maximum in Argentina, I think, but for the most part, tornadoes happen here in the United States. That's by far where the maximum is. Flooding is, occurs everywhere, all over the world, at any place, at any time. Maybe there's that desert in Argentina that gets like an inch of rain every 5 years. Maybe not there, but just about everywhere else in the world, you get flooding. So it's going to be a threat for every single United States state and territory. The areas that are most prone to flooding are where most people live. You look at the state of Arkansas, you'll notice that most people live near bodies of water. You've got a lot of populations set near the Arkansas River. The Arkansas River is where most of the big cities are in Arkansas. You also have, lots of people that live near big area lakes, state parks, Buffalo River, the Ouachita, Lake Ouachita, as we found out yesterday with all the hail, all the people that were there camping and that just live there naturally. So we get flooding where people live because people tend to go to bodies of water. That's where you're going to find most of the population. That's also going to include, we don't have this in Arkansas, but Great Lakes and oceans as well. Most of the world's population lives on a beach. That's where we choose to live as humans. And it's not really a huge surprise. We need water to live. So we get a lot from that natural resource, water. And so that's where most people are. That's also the most prone area for flooding. Your rivers are going to come out of their banks. You're going to get, flooding due to high tide, due to hurricanes, due to storm surge and things like that, all near large bodies of water. And flooding, the most common source of it is just going to be heavy rain. So any place that can get heavy rain in the United States is prone to flooding. And that includes everywhere in the state of Arkansas. I worked in the Dallas-Fort Worth office before here, and when I came to Arkansas, I was honestly shocked to learn that Arkansas has double the normal annual rainfall of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I thought I was crazy at first. I'm like, there's no way that's true. But sure enough, it is. Arkansas gets a lot of rain, at least compared to what I'm used to. Dallas-Fort Worth does not apparently get very much rain. So yeah, we get lots of rain, and flooding in my 7 years in the state has been the primary thing, the highest impact weather that I've dealt with. The most widespread, of course, was the river flooding, the awful river flooding of 2019. And that was really strange because it hardly rained in Arkansas. It wasn't our rain that did it. It was rain in Kansas and Oklahoma, heavy rainfall through the month of May that just really hammered the upper Arkansas River basin and sent all that water into the Arkansas River. And people wondered why we were flooding so bad because it just wasn't that rainy, but we got the impacts anyways. Hey, it went that time. All right, so I've talked about some of this. Heavy rain is by far the most common cause of flash flooding, especially in Arkansas. Dam and levee failures, those are also things that we experience at times. We did most frequently, I guess, in 2019 with the Arkansas River flooding. We saw many of the levees along the Arkansas River fail. And I think it was 2016 or 17, the White River, White and Black River flooding. We had a lot of levee failures along the Upper White and the Black River, especially it inundated the town of Pocahontas, almost completely flooded out their Walmart, which is where most of the city's commerce seemed to come from. I'm not an expert, but that seemed like a really big deal, flooding the Walmart in Pocahontas there. Other things are not very common in Arkansas. Other contributors to flash flooding, rapid snowmelt, not really a big deal here in Arkansas. That's going to be mountains, usually rapid snowmelt, and then ocean water. If we get ocean water flooding, some other apocalypse has occurred. that's probably not caused by heavy rain or hurricanes. So we might be going the way of the dinosaurs if that happens. But ocean water is another very common source of flooding. Recent very high impact flooding events. I think we had Fort Lauderdale this year. It wasn't caused by the ocean, but it was just an incredible amount. 20 some inches of rain fell in 24 hours. And the high tide complicated the flooding. It didn't cause it, but it complicated. It prevented some of the water from escaping the city in Florida. But we had Harvey, a very prolific tropical storm rain producer, storm surge plus heavy rain. And most hurricanes bring a storm surge, heavy rainfall threat. And with hurricanes, everybody gets all wrapped up and, oh my God, that's a category 3, category 4, category 5. And that has to do with the wind speed. But storm surge is by far the #1 killer. And this is a common theme that we get in media coverage, is there's all this focus on the dramatic, the wind, the trees bending down, the roofs being blown off. But that doesn't usually kill people. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't usually kill people. Most people can survive that. But the flooding, that's a totally different story. You can't outrun the water. If you're in an area where the whole city is getting inundated with water, there's no safe place to go. What do? Go in your tornado shelter? Go underground? No, right? That's bad. We don't have things built to survive flash floods. So it's something that doesn't, we're not as resilient to, and it's just something that doesn't get as much coverage as it probably should compared to the impacts that it has on society. Things that you can do to prepare for flooding. Arkansas is going to see flash flooding always and forever, unless water never is in liquid form on this planet for some reason. We're going to get flooding. So you can stay informed, have an idea that heavy rainfall or a flooding event is approaching. In Arkansas, not all the time, but most of the time, we can have a forecast out there for heavy rainfall, and you can know flooding or flash flooding is going to be possible within the next couple of days. That can allow you to get prepared. I think in the case of the 2019 Arkansas River flooding, that was a very long duration flood. So there was a lot of time to get sandbags, sandbag up your house, sandbag up the levees, and make preparations like that. You can't do that unless you know something bad is coming your way, is headed your way. So stay informed, have that information, have multiple routes, ways to get either weather information or river information, both of which you can get from the National Weather Service. And your local page, your local website is weather.gov/LZK. That's just our office call sign. It doesn't mean anything cool, unfortunately. Determine your personal likelihood of flood, your personal risk to flooding. If you live in a low-lying area, a lot of times this. If there's a heavy rainfall event and the water almost always comes up to your back porch, something like that, you're in a flood-prone area, you may have to have a different place to go if we're going to have a really prolonged heavy rainfall event. Maybe have a family's house that you can go to on short notice. Hey, I'm going to have to stay with you for a few days because I think the house is going to flood. Just get away from the water. It's really all we can do. Know which roads on your commute are likely to flood. If you know the hazards that are between you and your common destinations, be it to work, be it to school, whatever your daily routine is, know some alternate routes. If the shortest route is through a low-lying area, know some alternate routes where you can still get there, but you can avoid the water if it's going to be there. Then you don't have to make panic decisions if you do happen upon a water-covered road. In advance, okay, well, I can take a higher elevation route to get to my destination. Evacuation orders are pretty rare in Arkansas for floods. They may have occurred in the 2019 Arkansas River flooding. I live in Conway myself, so I know Conway, and probably nobody knew this, but I mean, FEMA and everybody was preparing for Conway to just get wiped off the map if that Lolly levee broke. There was nothing going to save the city. So that was probably going to be a big evacuation order of 65,000 people. If the Lolly levee we'd probably still have FEMA trailers in Conway today if that had happened. But if you get evacuation orders, listen to them. That's much more common on the coast, or if you're vacationing. If there's a hurricane and you spent a lot of money on vacation, I mean, if they tell you to leave, just get out of there. It is not going to be fun sitting in the middle of that hurricane just because you spent some money on vacation. It sucks, I get it, but it's not worth it. If you lose a couple $1,000s, it's much better than losing your life. And is a couple $1,000s worth being more miserable than you can imagine for a couple weeks? I wouldn't pay money for that. So just listen to the local officials if they tell you to get out of there. An emergency kit. This is something you really need if you're in a low-lying area. I don't know if I'd build one for every single household. I mean, it's good to have an emergency kit for general purposes, but maybe not necessarily for flooding if you live on a hill, right? Seems a little crazy, but an emergency kit in general is good for disaster preparedness. And then, be proactive. If if it's going to flood, just don't be near that flood water. That will largely mitigate your risk to the flood waters. In the middle of a flood, again, have a way to get current information. We do issue flash flood warnings, river flood warnings, so it's coming, and once it's happening, we do issue those products, just like a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning. We tell you when it's happening in your area. So have a way to get those warnings and just stay informed so that you've built up this plan, you've got everything ready. How do you know to enact the plan? Well, you don't want to wait for the water, right? That's like waiting for the choo-choo train sound of a tornado. You wait for that, not so great. Your chances aren't all that good of not being injured. You don't want to wait for the water to take action. So, if you're in a low-lying area, you're in a flash flood warning, that's when you seek higher ground. If you have time, if you can plan to evacuate, if you can disconnect your utilities, that's always good. You don't want to come back. If your house catches on fire because you left utilities plugged in, some sort of electric fire, your house will still burn even though it's completely flooded with water. The only difference is the firefighters can't get to it. So it's just going to burn. And I know it sounds ridiculous, right? How could the house burn if there's water all around it? Well, the bits that are below water won't burn. The bits that are above water will. So that's what happens. So if you can disconnect your appliances, and of course, avoid flooded roads. That's where 80 to 90% of fatalities with floods occur, is people driving into a flood. This is an example of somebody driving into a flood. and, you know, we can't fix that at the Weather Service. If we issued a flash flood warning, would they make a different decision? No. I mean, you don't need a flash flood warning. They drove up, they didn't accidentally drive into that flood, right? They had plenty of time to stop. And maybe they would have stopped and been stuck there for a while. I don't know, but clearly what happened was worse, right? Now you were, oh, this is an inconvenience. I don't want to wait here for a few hours. Well, now you have to get a new car, right? It's and they got lucky that they got washed to the shore, right? They got washed to the other side. Otherwise, they're just going to go downstream, and that vehicle's likely and look at all the junk in the water. Where a flash flood, it's not like just pure swimming water, but it's just bigger and deeper, right? Oh, it's got a bunch of junk in it, and that junk hurts. It will destroy your vehicle, and you'll just be tumbling in the water with the vehicle. And, you see how nasty that water is. It's very muddy. If you go underwater and manage to be able to get out of it, there's no orienting yourself. You think, oh, I swim out. No, how do you know where up is? You don't know if you're tumbling in water. So this is how people die in floods. They drive into the flood. So don't do that, and be an ambassador, right? Tell people not to do that. Spread the word. It genuinely helps save people's lives. After a flood, of course, stay informed. Know the local river levels. Know if any additional heavy rainfall is coming. Avoid the floodwaters even after the flash flooding is over. If you just have water standing there, know that water in a city, if your city is flooded or your town is flooded, keep in mind what is normally in the drains and the sewers is now floating around you. Not something you just want to walk through, wade in. It's disgusting. Don't play in the floodwaters. They are very gross. Avoid disaster areas. This is another good general tip. I don't think most people like to looky-loo at flooded areas, or maybe they just can't because it's flooded, but this was a real big problem, April 1st, 2023, the day after the Little Rock tornado, Little Rock and surrounding communities tornado. You had emergency crews, volunteers out there trying to help, but the streets were clogged mainly with people that just wanted to see what happened, and that's it. And I saw people sitting there streaming, taking YouTube videos and Instagram videos and everything, and TikTok videos. So they're probably called something cool. I just don't know the phrase, but I get it. People want to be able to, show people what they want to see, but at the same time, you're in the way. So avoid disaster areas. If you weren't hit by the disaster and you're not helping, just stay away. That's how you can help. Just don't get in the way. Road closures. Don't ever drive around one of those roads, those barriers. It says road closed, flooding ahead. That's a real good sign, literally a sign that you shouldn't be doing that. And wait for the all clear. All clears are not usually communicated for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. That's kind of obvious, right? The thing goes away. You can experience that. For floods, you might be able to experience or see that the water is going down, but wait and make sure that the area is completely safe to get into before you try to drive back in there. Simple things like, after a flood, you might try to drive over a bridge. Well, that bridge, there might not be a support for that bridge anymore. It might have gotten knocked out by a log from the flash flood. You don't know that the bridge is not supported until you drive over it, and then you go down with the bridge. Not a fun way to figure that out. So just wait for the all clear. Wait until they open the road. Don't drive around those barriers before you go back in. And if you were flooded out, if you did evacuate an area, let people know. Emergency management. Everybody wants to know where you are. Don't just be out there wandering about. Have a way to contact friends and family. That also helps calm a disaster down very quickly. This is the impact of a flood after a flood. You can see the damage. It's just nasty. It's heartbreaking. It sucks, but it's gross. Everything has to be cleaned. getting the muck and junk out of there is half the battle. Disinfecting everything is a much bigger challenge, especially drywall. It gets wet, and it's not just wet, it's sewage wet. So you really have to find a way to, it's a terrible disaster. Flooding costs billions of dollars of damage every single year. But these things can be cleaned up. They can be rebuilt, but people can't. So we want to keep the people safe and deal with the impacts later. The power of water is something most people underestimate. Water weighs approximately 8.5 pounds per gallon. And in a flood, even a small flood, you've got 1,000 gallons of water, moving over any given area per second. So unless you're capable of, doing squatting 8,000 pounds or bench pressing 8,000 pounds, you're probably not going to win that battle against water. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you're probably right. The stuff that's that's being carried by it adds to the force that's applied to anything. But just water by itself is already, most of the time people don't think that 6 inches of running water, think, well, I'm an adult, 6 inches of running water, that's like a kiddie pool, right? No big deal. It's a big deal. That's a lot of force on your body. You're not going to make it through that. It doesn't sound very deep, but it's, but you're right. As the water gets deeper, even things like vehicles, you'd be surprised at how little amount of water it takes because of the force of the water, but also just because of the stuff, like you said, that's in it, hitting the vehicle and adding that force and making it that much easier to move your vehicle down the flood. Absolutely. Play in the pool, not in the floodwaters. Again, once an area is flooded, it's not clean, pristine water. You don't let the kids or the grandkids out there to go play in it. It's not just free fun time in the water. It's gross. Don't do it. As we try to tell folks, turn around, don't drown. Most flash flood deaths are people either driving in or playing in the water. This was a neat drawing from kids at school. Turn around, don't drown, save yourself. And for kids, it's especially unfortunate because they're not making the decision to drive in, right? They're being driven into the water. So that's even scarier. Imagine you not having control of that situation, but you're forced into a flood. So please don't do it. Be late. And, people driving into floods, we're not talking about people that are just idiots. We're not just talking about, dumb people. Oh, that dude's a redneck, whatever. I would never do that. These are people that see water over a road and it actually looks reasonable to drive over. It doesn't look like it would be that bad. So we're not talking about idiots. We're talking about me, and we're talking about you, right? You see this and it doesn't look that bad. And that's the problem. That's how people get into trouble. The water is not going to conform to the hole in the road. So if there's a hole in the road, the water is not going to show you, oh, well, the water is going to go down and then back up. No, it's going to be flat. And since, if the water hasn't moved in a while, it might appear even with the road, and it might not appear agitated. It might appear to be clean water, but you drive into it and then you agitate it by going down several feet into the water. And you saw how quickly his vehicle disappeared there. And, you see something like this where, I don't know what this is, a college campus, a parking lot, whatever. This person it doesn't look like that much water. It's not even over the tires, right? So they're driving and then there's no road there anymore. That's the problem with flooding. And at night, this is especially, this is during the day, so you still can't see the hole in the ground, but at night, your headlights simply reflect off the water. So you really don't know what's coming up ahead of you. The light that is available is being scattered, bouncing and being scattered up off the road. So you don't have the normal, your normal night vision. The headlights aren't doing the good job that they normally do when the road is wet. So any questions about flooding or flash flooding before I move on to the opposite? Yeah.
Any opinion
Yeah, so the question was, any opinions on FEMA flood insurance? You know, I think the FEMA flood insurance program, I think overall it's a good program. You know, the reason why it's there is because private insurance companies have been dropping policies because they can't cover the insured losses. So the FEMA flood insurance program, I think, is good because it's backed by taxpayer dollars. So it's not one of those things where FEMA is going to pull out and you're not going to be covered all of a sudden. And you have to wait to litigate it to try to sue the company for, backing out or claiming bankruptcy or whatever the problem is. So most homeowners insurance anymore does not cover flooding. And if you don't look at your policy, that's probably not obvious. You kind of have to look at the details. If you ask your insurance agent directly, they'll tell you. They're not going to lie to you, but they're probably not going to advertise it either. That, hey, this doesn't cover flooding. You'd have to get separate flood insurance. So the FEMA flood insurance program, I think, is good. Now, the chances are, if you've lived in your house for 30 plus years and it's never flooded, maybe you don't need it, but that FEMA flood insurance, that one time you might need it, your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover it. Your 30 years of life that's in that house, you can't replace it, but at least you can get some sort of money to help, soften the blow a little bit. The whole point of the program is if a lot of people get the flood insurance, it also spreads the cost. Since it's a nationwide program, it's not limited to just one company that might cover one state. And I know places where people are having trouble getting flood insurance or homeowners insurance in general are the coastal areas, Florida and the Gulf Coast, where since hurricanes are becoming more frequent and more dangerous, the insured losses are going up and insurance companies don't want to deal with it. So I think the FEMA flood insurance program is a good program for everybody. I think it's necessary in some areas, but for Arkansas, I think it's just a good safety net to make sure something bad doesn't happen and you're not stuck with your insurance company saying, well, we don't cover that. So. All right. Well, I'll move on to the exciting flash drought. The thing that's always covered in the news, right? Always makes the news headlines. It is. I mean, it's important. We had a crazy flash drought in 2012, which we'll talk about. And it had some it had big economic impacts in Arkansas, but it had economic impacts across the entire central United States. So a flash drought is a sort of like a flash flood, a rapid onset or intensification of drought. In the case of 2012, Arkansas went from no drought to the worst drought possible in the course of 3 months. So the timetable is a lot different than flash flooding. Flash flooding can happen in 3 hours, but 3 months, that's a very short time for a very high impact drought to develop. So a flash drought, this is not a slow burn, pun sort of intended. This is something that happens relatively quickly in a climate sense. So over a season. So one summer, you go from everything being perfect to everything being drier than anything you can remember. So things that cause flash droughts. Well, dry weather, right? I mean, that's kind of like, duh. Yeah, that causes all droughts. So it's dry weather combined with exceptionally hot temperatures. And that's what really drives the flashy nature of the drought is the record temperatures or a prolonged period of near record temperatures. That really pumps the heat out of the soil and causes the plants to stop putting moisture into the atmosphere because they become drought stressed. And so that cuts off two major sources for water vapor in the atmosphere. Also wind. We don't get a ton of that in Arkansas, but wind can worsen drought because it can add to the stress on the plants. It can also add to the very rapid spread of wildfires, which can burn away vegetation, which can make your drought even worse. But these three factors are the primary things that that lead to a flash drought. Now, the impacts, as you can imagine, agricultural, it can be a significant impact. The ecosystem, in a general sense, wildlife, but also, things that aren't crops that are on a farm. So cattle, other types of farm animals, any type of animal that's eating hay or grass, they will experience significant stress. Wildlife, we don't have an easy way to quantify the impact of a flash drought on wildlife, but we know that the impact is very severe during a flash drought. All wildlife is very stressed, and a lot of that is just because less habitat that they have to thrive in. Yes. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. That goes beyond my area of expertise, unfortunately. I don't really know. It'd be nice if they migrated, but I don't know how they would know where to migrate. Birds probably are the most resilient. You'd think they could easily get up and fly away, but a lot of other creatures, I don't know what their migration capability is, or how they even know where to find water. Again, that's my last biology class was like 9th grade, so we're getting way out of my anything I should be talking about. It does have a pretty major economic impact as well. So there's never a positive economic impact for a drought. So it's always going to do something negative, to a state or even local community. And then wildfires. That's sort of a combination of these factors, but wildfires are significantly more likely in flash drought periods. And a lot of that is because the nature of flash drought is you go from a fairly healthy vegetation cycle to a very stressed one in a short period of time. So that means your biomass that's burnable is quite large when you have a flash drought. So this is looking at 2012. This was the U.S. Drought Monitor. This was the U.S. Drought Monitor, May 1st, 2012. White is good. That means no shading anywhere. So that's normal. That means all the vegetation, May 1st, 2012 was healthy. You can see Northeast Arkansas was a little dry, but everything's pretty much in the scope of normal. We go to July 31st, 2012. We have exceptional drought for, I don't know, a third, maybe up to a half of the state. So we go from no drought to the worst drought category that we have a word for in 3 months. So May, June, July, nothing to the worst drought imaginable. That's as flashy as you're ever going to see a drought. Usually to go from D0 to D4, usually it takes multiple months, usually almost a year to make that progression. This happened in 3 months. So here was the temperature. Here were some of the temperatures during that period. Now I just picked a station. I just picked Little Rock because, well, I'm talking to you guys in Little Rock, but it's just representative of what happened. And if you look at the graph, you can see in May, these bars represent the range of temperatures on each day from May 1st through August 1st. The bars are the high and low temperature each day. The very top of the graph, that red line, is the record high. The very bottom is the record low. You'll notice those blue bars never touch the bottom. Go figure, right? But you see when the blue bars touch that red line up at the top, that means that set the daily high temperature record for that day in Little Rock over its 150-year period. And I just pulled this data today. So this includes the 11 years that follow 2012. It still has set those records. So you can see these daily high temperature records that were set. It got warmer in May, but we didn't really set, and maybe one day we set records. Things got kind of normal again as we got into early June, but then look at what happens in the end of June. We go through a week where we set record high temperatures almost every day. with temperatures above 100 degrees for, I don't know, 4 or 5 of those days out of 7. So that's pretty extreme. And you can also see how the bars get very tall, right? See how they're kind of squat here, then they're super tall. Well, we don't have major temperature swings in Arkansas. So very tall bars means that the temperature is, very variable. It's getting very hot, then it's getting relatively cold. So what type of environment are you familiar with where it gets super hot during the day and super cold at night? In a desert, right? Arkansas is not a desert. So when it starts behaving like one, something bad is happening. That is not normal. So that is more of what we expect to see in a desert type biome, more so than what we have in Arkansas. So, by late June, things are very stressed. We get into July, early July, sort of back to normal again, just no rain. But then we start hitting record high temperatures again when we get into the second part of July and as we go into August. These were some of the temperatures in late June. And remember, I said this didn't just impact the state of Arkansas. So basically everywhere the temperatures were above 100 degrees experienced this flash drought. So we're talking Kansas, Missouri, parts of Illinois, Oklahoma, your Okies, right? Arkansas, Texas, we're all experiencing this flash drought and had these extremely high temperatures. And look at the temperatures in Arkansas, 106 in Little Rock, you have 108 to our north, 107 up near the Missouri border. So extremely hot temperatures, even by Arkansas standards. I know it's hot here, but it's usually hot and humid. There's a difference when it's just super hot and dry. Here's the 2012 precipitation trends. Now this is January 1st through through May 1st. And these lines, the blue line would be the wettest year on record. The red line would be the driest year on record. And then the brown line is normal. And the green line is the actual data. That's what's happening. So, we take a look at what happened from January 1st through May 1st, and the green line and the brown line at the end of the graph there are pretty much touching each other. So we had a normal year. We go through May 1st and everything's normal. Everything's healthy, fine, just like the drought monitor indicated. Now, if we just take a look at the precipitation from May 1st through August 1st, where's the green line? That's bad. All I see is a shaded green area. The green line and the red line are the same. The driest period on record ever in the 170-year period of record for Little Rock was 2012. That was the driest May 1st through August 1st on record. So the green line and the red line are one and the same for that period of time. So the driest we've ever been during that 3-month period, obviously way below normal. Through that 3-month period, May 1st through July 31st, Little Rock had 3.5 inches of rain. That's tiny. That's very minuscule. Sometimes we can get that in a thunderstorm. We didn't get that in 90 days. So that's a really, really dry period. So the impacts that the 2012 flash drought had, agriculture, it didn't actually do anything. That's anticlimactic, I know. The crops were fine. The normal start to the year allowed for early planting. The crops were already pretty healthy, and the farmers were able to irrigate. So the crops were actually fine. It didn't do anything to the crops. The ecosystem, that's a lot of words. That means it's bad. Not so limited impact. So we had humans rationing water for the first time in 20 years in Arkansas, and it happened every year when I was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but it's never happened here. So, rationing water, if humans are rationing water, especially the relatively careless way that we use water, imagine what's happening to the wildlife, which does not use water carelessly. So If humans are rationing, it's bad. It's having a major impact on the ecosystem. But farm animals are running out of food. There is no grass anymore. There's no alfalfa. There's no hay. It does not grow in this flash drought. So the farm animals are running out of food. They have to ship it in from somewhere that's not having this flash drought. And that costs an incredible amount of money. It does save the animals, but at a very, very hefty price. Some of the lowest river flows that we have on record occurred during this period. So some of the lowest levels, we've ever recorded on the Arkansas River, White River, Black River. And we rely on that for commerce as well, for shipping goods down the Arkansas River. Well, if it gets too low, you're not shipping anything. So, and of course, as the river levels get low and the lakes and the ponds dry up, that's all fresh water that's normally available for farm animals, but also wildlife that has now just been overtaken by the drought. It limits the area where those, all those animals, they have to now gather, sort of like in Africa they have a monsoon period and then they have a very dry period. And that's where all the predators eat all the animals, right? When they have to run to the little puddles to try to drink. Well, the same thing happens, except there's no recovery period in a flash drought because it's not natural. It's not supposed to happen that way. The economy. So this flash drought cost just the Department of Agriculture $128 million of losses. That was all farmers having to buy resources to feed their cattle during this period. Again, the crop losses luckily weren't there, but $128 million, that's a pretty big hit. And again, this is just Arkansas. This is not in Texas where they were actually culling herds. I remember being in Texas at this time where they're actually killing cattle because they can't feed them. There's no water for them anymore. So yeah, very, very high impact for the ecosystem and the economy. And then wildfires. We don't usually have to worry about wildfires here in Arkansas. Yet in Yell County, we had an 1,100 acre wildfire. And it actually caused 2 communities and all the surrounding communities to evacuate. 1,000 people had to evacuate so that they didn't get caught in the wildfire, which is unheard of in Arkansas. But that occurred on July 25th near the communities of Ola and Berta in Yell County. And that's really all I've got. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you guys, though, that you might have about droughts or floods or anything you want to ask me. Really, I'm here. So. Yeah.
Flash drought. Did they know it was going to come? I mean, was this something particular, or was this surprise to the National Weather Service?
Well, I'd have to say something of this magnitude is probably always going to be a surprise. I don't think, it's like Monty Python, right? Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the driest 3-month period on record. You just don't think that's going to happen. Now we do have climate outlooks where we think things are going to be drier than normal and warmer than normal. But with global warming, every climate outlook now is warmer than normal. So you really have to pay more attention to whether it's going to be drier than normal or, wetter than normal. And, I think there were climate outlooks that said it was going to be drier than normal and hotter than normal during that period. But, a climatologist would probably say, well, yeah, we predicted it. But, that magnitude, I would argue nobody really predicted that. Yeah.
You attribute deforestation. There was used to be known as wood. It's not in. Look at Northwest Arkansas and there are bumper communities where there used to be green space. So that is contributing towards this. As master naturalist, what can you do?
Yeah, the changes in land use, I mean, it certainly does have an impact on the heat load of the environment. In terms of what can we do to mitigate it, I really don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, the easy answer would be stop building, but that's not very likely. And that's not really good for anybody either, right? We still have to live in this community, live in this state, live in these communities with a positive economy. Otherwise it's miserable for other reasons. So we need to find solutions that are good for the economy, but also good for the environment. And those are not easy solutions. Those are questions I think that we need to be asking our community leaders, our elected officials, and that we should be working on together. But I don't have any easy answer for you, unfortunately. Yeah.
Done that would show, say, on the areas, some areas, say down at Hill and so on, that would really get wiped out from, say, 16 or 18-inch flooded 24 hours I did in Kentucky and North Carolina.
There are a bunch of studies like that, but I don't think they're all in one place yet. I know the Weather Service is working on a project, a flood inundation mapping project that is going to attempt to bring all of these disparate studies and databases into one cohesive thing that is easily searchable. Those studies, they exist, but they exist all over the place right now. Different people paid for it for different reasons at different times. And so all that hard work has been done in most cases, but how easy is it to find? That's a totally different question. And with flood inundation mapping, I know that's something the National Weather Service is actively working on, bringing all of those databases from different governmental entities together to try to get everybody to share information in one place.
It's by no means the level of like rain on grid, kind of inundation, flooding, but a good start to experience and it ties into the FEMA. You go home and search for FEMA National Flood Hazard Clear. That was good at this moment of the study in the area, the floodplains. You're obviously based on studies and based on that climate science also. Urban areas. Still, maybe we should have that part of one down it will not come 20,000. So mention that the German floods a year ago. That one River Valley there, my in-laws live close to their neck. But up that valley about 6 months afterwards, and it's fully constructed. That there are full mature trees that are literally uprooted, carried down the stream and knocking out bridges. It was one of a restaurant on second.
Yeah.
That's why we're at the bottom of where that water is running right down the ravine next one. 10 inch, 12 inch. I mean, this is going to be devastating. Not necessarily so much to us, but that still goes down to another confluence, still right up, and that goes down to a plane. I've actually tried to get hold of, I can't remember the person dealing with emergency management. Back emails or anything.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to read it. Yeah, is there anything based on climate changes and the weather changes that we're got to work on using, the climate change.
Sure.
Like that. It's changing as far as our planning for more severe types of.
Yeah. I mean, I think the resource he gave you is probably the thing it has the best access right now, but flood inundation mapping, it is a big deal, and it is being, it's a resource where people are trying to bring everything together in one place because it's a recognized problem for sure. Yeah.
Following up on David's question about land use, good high weather and high temperatures, they couldn't send moisture back to the air. So maybe some land greenery. But I don't, it's changing topics. I don't know the website, and it may be an insurer's website. But there is a website where you can put in your home address and it will pop. 20% risk with floods, your real risk is heat,
That's interesting.
cold, or ice, but I can't.
Yeah.
It's not a government website. It may be kind of a quasi.
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of good resources out there, many that I'm not even aware of. But I mean, there's a lot of interest in, in land use characteristics, land use changes, and community risk and mitigation. So there are a lot of resources out there.
We got two more questions. And
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
see if there are any on.
That's a good question. I think with El Nino becoming so strong so quickly, I think the climate forecast, I'd have to look. I should have anticipated that question, but I think the climate, the seasonal forecast, I think it's definitely for hotter than normal. That probably means it's also for drier than normal. At least in the summer, those two things almost always happen hand in hand in Arkansas. Because I didn't study it right before I came here, I can't guarantee that's it. I just remember there being a pretty good signal for hotter than normal. So that probably goes along with drier as well. Yeah, so El Nino in general, it's looking at the temperature of the Pacific Ocean near the equator. And there are different indices, basically where east and west you're measuring the temperature between South America and, I forget what the islands are called, islands south of Asia, but Malaysia, I guess. There's different indices measuring the water temperatures, the change from normal at different parts of that. But the most common index is sort of right smack in the middle between South America and the Asian islands. And that's called El Nino 3.4, I think that's usually what we base our weather patterns off of in the United States. And El Nino means that is hotter than normal. Those water temperatures are hotter than normal, which tends to, I think, create more heat over the western and central part of the United States, and more cool and rainy weather over the northeastern kind of third of the United States. But there are, if you look up like El Nino weather pattern for the United States, you'll find very, very detailed maps. The El Nino Southern Oscillation pattern, that's something that has been studied extensively. So it is very well understood, the average weather pattern that happens. It doesn't mean we can't get freak events like yesterday's crazy hail, right? I mean, freak events are going to happen, but in general, it's usually warmer and drier, I think, for us. Yeah.
To David, there is a program in Chattanooga, Tennessee that encourages studying by what they plant and how we plant, and there's a whole certification of yards, and that might be an interesting thing to explore. Reminder.
Yeah.
No,
Well, let's give Dennis another.
Thank
you. And we're really glad you came, and now we're going to worry about more things. Which is,
well, I never want you to do that.
yeah, be thoughtful about flash floods and flash droughts. And then the the question is, are you more of an Amazon or a Lowe's person?
Probably Amazon. Yes.
Okay,
All right.
and unfortunately, it's not a $500 gift.
Oh, no,
so
no, I
would not get
realize that.
It's a $25.
Yes.
experience.
Well,
So
thank you very much. Yes. Thank you.
And so, we're leaving of the building without leaving too much of a footprint here, health, kitchen and health. If that means eating some cold pizza. Nobody will make a judgment on their cookies, chocolate foods. Thanks to Emily for bringing the.
Yes.
Clap for everybody. Right.
Sure, yeah, that's what you.
Such a nerd question. I didn't want to answer.
That's fine.
Everyone, that concludes it. Be safe out there, stay cool.